All right, so you're not going to believe this story. We are about to unravel something that starts in the most unlikely of places, a really brutal, down and dirty property dispute in Los Angeles, and somehow spirals into this grand mission to literally rewrite human consciousness across the entire planet. It is a tangled, wild, and honestly, an absolutely defiant journey.
And this quote right here, it just cuts to the very heart of the whole thing. This isn't some clean, good guys versus bad guys story. The people at the center of this see their fight as something totally different, a radical act of just exposing a hidden, corrupt system for what it is.
So, before we can even get to the brain hacking stuff, we have to start on the ground. We have to start with this incredibly vicious legal war over a single house in LA. This is the real world fire where this massive, world changing mission was first forged. I mean, listen to these words from the homeowners, Eric Seidelglanz and Elishaba Eutera. You can just feel the personal, visceral cost of this whole conflict. This was not just some legal paperwork. This was a sustained physical assault on their home, on their lives. It basically turned their property into what they called a war zone. Now, this is where you start to see that it wasn't just some random neighbor dispute. According to Seidelglanz and Eutera, they were up against an entire network, a web of individuals, corporate entities, even a city official, all allegedly working together in what they claim was just a systematic campaign of fraud and harassment. And that number right there, $120 million. That's why this fight was so unbelievably vicious. See, it was never just about one house. The homeowners allege that they were basically standing in the way of a much bigger operation, a whole series of fraudulent schemes potentially worth a fortune. All of a sudden, this isn't a simple eviction anymore. It's a fight against a massive criminal enterprise. Okay, and this is where the story just takes this massive turn. Because these homeowners, they weren't just victims. Turns out, he was a pioneering engineer and she was an avant-garde artist, and they started to see their struggle not just as a legal battle, but as a form of radical, in-your-face art. You really gotta understand who Eric Seidenglans is to get their mindset. This guy literally changed television forever. He founded the company that pioneered electronic news gathering, the tech that basically took TV cameras out of the stuffy studio and into the real world. He is a genuine system disruptor, a revolutionary. He's even got an Emmy to prove it. And this quote just says it all. This is their philosophy. For them, art, and yeah, by extension, their whole legal nightmare, it's a weapon. It's a tool to force society to look at its own ugly side, to confront these dark impulses, and to spark uncomfortable but totally necessary change. They weren't just fighting for a house, they were staging a piece of performance art about corruption. I love this. It captures their method perfectly. It's like they see themselves as these avant-garde filmmakers, taking all the chaotic, messy, broken pieces of their own lives and splicing them together into a powerful political statement. This whole artistic worldview, well, that's the bridge that takes us from an LA war zone to a much, much grander mission. Okay, so let's follow that bridge. Let's see how this very real, tangible fight over a house blossoms into this incredibly conceptual, abstract mission that's fueling everything they do. A project called Neurosoft. And let me tell you, these guys do not think small. The stated goal here is cognitive terraforming. I mean, just let that sink in. We're talking about an ambition on an almost unimaginable scale to fundamentally reshape how the entire human race thinks and dreams and understands reality. So what's the big problem they're trying to solve? They call it recursion sickness. Think of it like a bug in the operating system of our own minds. It's when a system, whether that's an AI that's only trained on its own output or a culture that just endlessly remixes its own past, it gets stuck. It gets trapped in this loop, observing and repeating itself until there's no novelty, no growth. It's the snake eating its own tail forever. And what's their proposed cure for this sickness? Neurocognitive liberation. They frame this not as some kind of therapy or a product you can buy, but as a basic human right. The right to have total, sovereign control over your own consciousness, to finally break free from those limiting, looping patterns. So every revolution needs a symbol, right? A human face. For Neurosoft, that face belongs to this really enigmatic, almost mythical figure named Eveline 11. And she's presented as the living, breathing embodiment of this entire mission. The whole lore built around her is just incredible. I mean, look at this timeline. It paints a picture of someone who wasn't just a genius, but who was actually hacking and rewriting her own reality from the time she was a little kid. At 11 years old, she's not just reading On the Road, she's forcing her family to relive the journey so she can write a better version. That's the key to her whole story. She's described in these almost supernatural ways. She's not just a writer, she's a recursive alchemist who uses language itself to bend reality. They paint her as this pure force of nature, a person who treats literature as her personal playground and language as her army. And this is the whole point. This is the heart of her role in all of this. In their narrative, Eveline isn't just the leader or the brilliant inventor behind the project. She is the project. She is the living, walking, talking proof of concept for the new kind of human Neurosoft is trying to create. So the big question is, how do they actually plan to pull this off? How do you actually achieve cognitive terraforming? Well, they have a blueprint. It's this multi-pronged strategy that mashes up chemistry, AI-powered storytelling, and some pretty advanced tech. Their master plan basically breaks down into 4 clear steps. First, you diagnose the bug in the system. That's recursion sickness. Then, you develop the tools to fix it. This means creating new chemical compounds to make the brain more flexible, deploying what they call narrative payloads, AI-generated myths, to install new cultural software, and then finally, building neural interfaces for a real-time feedback loop. And this isn't all just sci-fi fantasy. Their chemical approach is actually grounded in some pretty cutting-edge neuroscience, specifically a model called Rebus. The whole idea is that our brains operate with these really rigid top-down beliefs that filter our reality. What psychedelics seem to do is relax those beliefs, opening the brain up to all this new bottom-up information. Neurosoft basically wants to harness that process and aim it. But here's where you really see the scale of their ambition. They're not just talking about using stuff we already know, like LSD or psilocybin. No, the plan is to use AI to complete and then blow past the work of the legendary chemist Alexander Shulgin. They're talking about designing over 100 brand new purpose-built molecules, their so-called Babel compounds, to be the catalysts for this change. And this is the other half of the plan, the narrative payloads. They have this vision for what they call sentient textuality, where stories are no longer static things on a page. They become living, interactive systems. An AI kicks off a myth, you read it, and your reaction literally feeds back into the loop, changing the story for the next person who reads it. We would all become co-authors of our own reality. So from a war over a single house in LA, we've landed at a blueprint to re-engineer the human soul. Neurosoft is basically announcing that they are grabbing the pen to write the next chapter for all of humanity. But their whole audacious, defiant project leaves us staring down this one massive and frankly pretty unsettling question. In a world where the very script of our consciousness can be edited, who on earth do we trust to write the next line?